That was it. That was the countdown.
We're recording a podcast now? Good
Yes,
job,
that
John.
was the countdown. Welcome back to the Obvious Choice Podcast, everybody. I'm here with Ren Jones. Amber is missing, and so I'm actually the host of the podcast because she produces this thing. And Amber provided me with an annotated drawing of how to start the podcast, which consisted of a big red arrow to a button that says record. That's what Amber thinks of my ability to do technology, everybody.
Man.
Today we're talking about
in America, John, for the nuclear code for the president. It's like, in case of war, push this button, Joe.
Mm-hmm. We're talking about making good decisions today. It sounds like a boring kind of topic. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take you through what I call my filters. Basically, this is a series of questions that I've developed over time that I ask myself to check in to make sure that I don't emotionally respond too quickly, and to make sure that to the best of my ability, I'm making a good decision when faced with whatever information. I think in our day and age where information's abundant, we can learn anything that we want with a snap of our fingers, with our voice, with typing into a search engine, whatever. I think figuring out the right question to ask and being resourceful in that way and making sure that we don't respond emotionally and too quickly in a moment. We kind of take our time. You know, I don't know about you, Ren, but I kind of feel this pressure all of the time to do things faster than I did them before and to accomplish more and better and quicker. And if I'm not, I feel like I'm getting behind. But every single time that I slow down and check in with myself, I'm like, no, A, why do I want that? But B, hey, what if I take a little bit more time with this thing and do a better job? And that might mean I don't do that other thing, but I also know that other thing isn't that important. I find myself to be in a better off position afterwards. Is that just me, or you feel that too?
I think it's really common that in a hustle, if social media exacerbated any two things more than anything else, one would be narcissism and one would be hustle culture. Like, if you really look at social media and really dive into what it fundamentally does, without question,
yeah.
One is it pushes narcissism and it pushes hustle. And I'm just wondering, when you refer to yourself, when you ask yourself, hey, do I need to do this? Do you ever use your name? Do you ever say like, hey, John, do I need to do this? Or do you say like little Johnny or young John or little me? Anything like that?
I definitely don't say little Johnny.
Hey, little Johnny. Do I need to do this?
Nah, so it's funny. Like, I was always an underdog growing up because I was always small, and I'm still a smaller guy.
Same.
Yeah, how tall are you? We're about the same height, I think.
I'm like 5'7", maybe.
Yeah, so
maybe
you're tall.
5'6" now. At 49 years old, I'm probably going the opposite direction, John.
So I consider you
subject.
tall. So yeah. I'm 5'4". And growing up, it was funny. Like, the one thing, you know, Amber always talks about, she's like, the one thing that gets to me is if somebody calls me stupid. Right? The one thing that used to get to me was somebody calling me small.
Yeah.
I don't know why. It doesn't anymore. I don't care. It's like, no, you're the small. You're small brained. Yeah, whatever. It doesn't matter.
Right.
But it was one thing that got to me, so I definitely don't say little Joe. But what I did do for years, and a lot of how these filters came about, was I had this process. This is the nerdiest, weirdest thing ever. But I had this process where I would interview myself. It's the only journaling technique I ever did. And that's why I don't talk about journaling and like all that kind of stuff, because I never did any of it. But the only thing that I ever did was I would take a notebook, and I always use those like crappy like dollar store notebooks.
Yeah.
And I would interview myself. And I didn't have a name for the other part of me interviewing.
Right.
But I would start it with like, hey, so what's going on today, man? And then I would just start writing. And I would write. And then the other side of me would just ask me basically why questions over and over again. And the other side of me was also like a sarcastic asshole. And so secretly I found that kind of funny.
Right.
But he would just like be sarcastic and asking me the questions. But I would keep responding to them. And that was a really good way to help me kind of figure out a lot of what I was thinking in a lot of the years where I was just building a whole bunch of stuff, man. There were just a lot of pieces moving. I didn't really know what it was, and I didn't plan for it or desire it or anything. It was just like, all this stuff has happened because I put in the work for the last number of years. Okay, what do I do now?
Hmm.
It was a cool exercise. That interviewing oneself exercise.
So
But
I've got
this,
it before you move on.
yeah,
I have a
yeah,
quick
okay.
question because I wanted to know this. Uh, do you feel like most of what you've done has been the result of ambition or curiosity? Like literally, ask myself a question, got to figure it out. Oh, this works. Let's go to the next question. Like which would you say
Wasn't
if you could
ambition.
distinguish?
Wasn't ambition.
Eh,
I don't have that much ambition.
don't not a lot of that. Okay,
No,
so you're just pretty
no.
much asking questions and solving problems, and then you fall into you know providing answers.
Um, I think a lot of it is because I grew up in a very stable environment.
Hmm.
By the time, I mean, my parents weren't rich by any means, but we certainly weren't poor. We never longed
Right,
for anything. We grew up in a good neighborhood. My parents were loving. I had good friends growing up. I was never abused in any way. I never got into drugs. Like
right, right.
um, there was never any serious adversity that I overcame, and so I don't think that I really felt like I needed to prove anything in that way, in
Hmm.
that
Hmm.
regard, which is a good thing or a bad thing, depending on how you want to look at it. I had a very good upbringing. And as a result, I don't have that much ambition. I think I have enough ambition, but it's like a
Right.
weird thing to admit that I don't have that much ambition. Like, I'm good.
So that's all right.
Uh, it's all right.
I'll
And
allow
so
it.
what is it then? That I think I just love building shit. I think that's what it is. It's perhaps this curiosity. I'm not sure. I
Hmm.
just like creating things that I feel like should exist into the world. And
Right.
once they're out there, I don't necessarily lose interest in them, but I lose interest in them from a business standpoint.
Right.
So much so that I've now started to design the different business enterprises that I have in a way that keeps that in mind because I know that about myself. There's Quick Coach, which I built a software company. We've
Hmm.
had 30,000 people register for it. Nobody works on it. Literally.
Right.
Literally. We don't have a single staff member who works for it. We have a development team. They're wonderful. Amber and I keep tabs on it, and I think we do a very good job. But it was designed to be the type of software platform that doesn't need a big team because I knew
Hmm.
that I just couldn't build that. And as a result, it's not going to be as big as it might otherwise be in terms of how much money it makes. But it's fun. And it needed to exist in the world. And the books are the same way. And even the mentorship. When I do build something that is a bigger business enterprise, I put a leader in charge of it
Hmm.
whose brain does not work the same way as mine, i.e., Amber, Jason.
Right. That makes sense.
It
That's a
just
good
works out
answer.
well. Yeah, it just works out well that way. So I guess curiosity.
Hmm.
Um, I mean, what to me, why do I get up and work and do stuff on any given day when truthfully I don't really need to? It's it's because it's fucking fun.
Hmm.
And it's fun because of this idea of I want to create things that were not there before. There was something that buddy JB said, John Brody said to me when I sent him one of my books. I don't remember, but it was before I knew him really well.
Hmm.
I was getting to know him, and like a lot of people, I really admired him. He was somebody who I kind of revered in the industry, and I still do. But he's a friend, so it's weird to say you like revere and admire a friend, but I still do. But I sent him a copy of the book, and he responded almost immediately before he had time to read a book. Right, so
Hmm.
he didn't respond with like, "Hey, this is great, you did a great job," because like he hadn't read the book. Like nobody could respond. But he said, "Dude, this is amazing. You know, if it wasn't for you, those pages would have been empty."
Dang.
Yeah,
Well, that's a big
see,
statement.
that's so when I
That's
think about what I do metaphorically and like in real life, it's like I fill pages.
that's
I
awesome, man.
this is what I do. Uh, I want to talk about system one and system two a
All
little
right.
bit because I think that's important to talk about with decision making.
I'm slightly
You familiar?
familiar.
You familiar with System 1, System 2?
Yeah, it's from the books. One is like I won't give it away, but one's like an automated sort of reactionary decision, and the other one's more thought provoking, deeper. Is that how it
Yeah.
frames? Okay.
Basically, I mean, this is Nobel Prize winning psychologist Kahneman and Mosterski.
Mm,
Thinking Fast and Slow is the most famous work, but obviously it was in the research beforehand. But they basically split our brain's processing into two systems, aptly named System 1 and System 2. And System 1 is fast, automatic, frequent, emotional, stereotypical, and subconscious.
mhm.
System 2 is slow, effortful, infrequent, logical, calculating, and conscious. And here's the problem that our brains are constantly trying to solve. The world is endlessly complex. Our brains are forced to focus and decide between too many things at once, right? If conscious thought, like if System 2, which immediately when you hear it, you're like, oh, I want to be System 2 all the time. I want to make good decisions all the time. I want to be slow. I want to be effortful. I want to be logical. I want to be calculating, right? If that dictated all of the things that we did, we'd become so overwhelmed and so paralyzed.
Right.
And System 1 works perfectly fine for the vast majority of things that we have to decide. Red light, stop. Green light, go.
Mm-hmm.
Y'all don't need to think about that or be too thoughtful about that. And the key then, with a lot of these filters, with a lot of these questions, in order to make the right decisions,
Mm-hmm.
is to use and almost trick or force your brain to use the right system at the right time. So that's where a lot of this comes from for me, is naturally your brain is almost always going to go and take the easier route. It's in physics there's a principle called Occam's razor, Occam's principle, which is in physics anything is always going to take the path of least resistance,
Mm-hmm.
right? Pour a bottle of water down a path, that water is going to follow the path of least resistance. Mentally, we do the same thing too naturally.
Mm-hmm.
We take the path of least resistance unless we're forced to otherwise. Most of the time, the path of least resistance is perfectly fine, useful. Sometimes not, though. And so a lot of these questions, the system that I kind of devised myself that I'm going to share with you, a lot of what this is doing is just to check in and say, hey, is this a System 1 thing? Is this a System 2 thing? Just to almost help me recognize it so that I can deal with it. Like I said, these are questions. There's basically 11 of them. I'll go through them all. Like a lot of the times when we have these lists,
Mm-hmm.
takes what's useful, throw out what isn't what's useful for you right now. Come back and listen to this podcast later on. The nice thing
Right.
about these types of things is that there's probably going to be something that'll like solve a problem for you right now, and that's cool. And then a year from now, you'll be in a different space, and something else that we say will
Right.
probably appeal to you then.
I love that.
And I think they're both equally valid. So don't feel like you need to like have to absorb these all. Like take whichever one makes sense. Some of them are really simple. Some of them take a little bit more thinking.
Not like if you don't get it now, you'll never get it.
Yeah, right, right. And so for a long time, I actually had these questions written out on a list that I kept with me all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I don't anymore because they've become really, really second nature, but I have them obviously down to read them. And so the first one is the simplest thing ever. Before I say yes to anything, before I decide to do anything, I always just ask myself, am I acting emotionally or irrationally right now? It's the simplest thing ever. Just take one step back. It takes 2 seconds. Am I being emotional right now? It's not necessarily a bad thing if you are,
Right.
but you should know if you are.
Right.
When I was young, when a lot of people were young, my parents told me to count to 10
Mm-hmm.
when I was angry. I think that's a really good practice for adults. Before you post that thing calling that person on the internet some name,
Oh, step
Maybe
back,
you
bro.
should count to 10 before you agree to speak at an event, before you agree to join this partnership that sounds really exciting, before you decide to do anything. Count to 10. It's a great way to avoid making emotional, irrational decisions. In many
It's
cases, it'd be fine. But it's like the simplest, like, like there's this wonderful little book called Everything I Really Need to Know I Learned in Kindergarten. And actually, I got a, it's by Robert Fulghum, and it's a book of short stories.
mhm.
Um, and and it's based around like there's one main one that's the everything I need to know. But he goes, these are the things I learned in kindergarten. Share everything. Play fair. Don't hit people. Put things back where you found them. Clean up your mess. Don't take things that aren't yours. Say you're sorry when you hurt somebody. Wash your hands before you eat. Flush. Warm cookies and cold milk are good for you. Live a balanced life. Learn some and drink some and draw some and paint some and sing and dance and play and work every day some. Take a nap every afternoon. When you go out into the world, watch out for traffic, hold hands, and stick together. Be aware of wonder. Remember the little seed in the styrofoam cup. The roots go down and the plant goes up, and nobody really knows how or why, but we are all like that. Goldfish and hamster and white mice and even the little seed in the styrofoam cup, they all die. So do we.
Mm.
It's just this, like, yeah, it's just this wonderful, hey, like, maybe it's not that complicated. So count to 10.
That is such a comprehensive and wise list of rules for life. It's
Right?
almost embarrassing.
Right?
Also, it pisses me off for the other 12 years of education that I had to get. It could have stopped me right there, John. I'd have figured all the rest of the shit out with that list.
One of the most beautiful things about having children is it brings you back to your own childlike awe.
Mm-hmm.
Calvin will ask me a question. We were walking the other day. He's like, Daddy, is lightning going to strike us? Not a bad question.
Right. It's a fair concern.
So then
Oh, man.
I'm thinking about Benjamin. I'm telling him about Benjamin Franklin.
Yeah.
I'm telling him because I read the Ben Franklin biography.
Mm-hmm.
I'm telling him about how like it was lightning was a major problem when the settlers first came because all houses were built of wood. People just assumed that lightning coming down from the sky was like either the gods were angry or fire coming. Nobody knew what they were. And then when Ben Franklin identified it as electricity, he created a lightning rod. Ben Franklin also created the first ever fire brigade and the first ever library and post office and all of this crazy stuff. But I mean, walk up and down the street and you think about just how much coordination goes into everything that we do, and just taking time to like look up at a tree or look down at the grass, and a kid will stare at it, and then you stare at it, and you're like, "There's a whole universe there, man."
Right.
You start seeing little things buzzing around, crawling up and down.
Right. Right. The hunger for observation leaves us as adults because we get preoccupied with end results. Right.
Yeah,
You just don't observe because you're so busy running through, just running
I
through every
like
day.
uh, I like having friends who are in different industries because what I'll do sometimes is I'll walk up and down the street and I'll ask them about how their stuff works. For example, I
Mm-hmm.
have a friend who has a master's degree in construction science, and he's a custom home builder. But we'll he's one of my best friends, and I'll walk down the street with them, and there'll be like a condo being built or something, and we'll just stand there talking about it, and I'll just ask him about like what's going on and why they're doing what they're doing, and like or sidewalks. Like, how are sidewalks so strong? Like, he's like, oh, they reinforce them with rebar. What? Like, how's that
Right.
work?
They
Well, you
do
see,
what?
concrete gets stronger via compression, but it's actually really, really weak when you stretch it out. So it's really good for things where it's going to be compressed. This type of material is really good when it's stretched out and whatever, right? It's just like, so really important things to know that we all forget about, and sometimes good to have a kindergarten around. Okay, number two. This is one I think you're familiar with. This one actually comes from John Burry. Mention you twice. Heads up,
Nice.
John.
Nice.
This is the fog filter. Is it a fact, an opinion, or a guess?
Mm-hmm.
So, when bombarded with marketing strategies that sound good, when you have an idea about your own business, ask yourself this question: is what I'm thinking right now a fact, an opinion, or a guess? Because it's easy to trick ourselves into thinking that we know what the right move is, when in reality, what it is that we lack sufficient data or information to decide whether it's good or not good.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the time, when you say, "Oh, so and so did that thing, that's what works for them," it's like, is that a fact, or are you guessing? A lot of what you see out there are opinions or guesses, and that doesn't discredit them immediately. But if you know that they're an opinion or a guess, then you can actually approach it and say, I'm going to collect data to see whether this is worth checking out versus I have to do this thing.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of OGs on social in our industry. Opinionated people and guessers. And again, like you said, it's not a bad thing. Like you could have the opinion that everyone needs to prioritize rest as much as they prioritize work. Like that's it, probably not a fact, but it's not a
Sure.
harsh or problematic opinion. As long as you express it as an opinion, that's for me, that's where the trouble happens. Like, I don't mind anybody saying anything that they think as long as they preface it with my opinion on the subject is, instead of the reality of that subject is everybody needs as much sleep as they need rest. No, that's kind of an opinion.
Right.
Like that's a comprehensive survey that you know,
So you
who's your
come at it
population that you surveyed for that?
you come at it from a different perspective as I do.
Yeah.
I come at it from the perspective of I've kind of just given up trying to expect or hope that anybody on the internet is going to speak with any reasonable amount of concern for others. They're all peacocking, just trying to show off and get attention. It's like all these people who do these like talking head videos over all these like dumb fitness fails or like all this stuff talking about how somebody else is on the internet is stupid. And their entire thing is like everybody is like, I'm calling out BS in the industry. It's like, to help you, it's like, well, you realize that what you're actually doing is you're supporting BS in the industry, doing exactly what they want you to do by sharing their material, and
Yes,
you're doing it to better your own position.
pretty much.
And so, actually, what you're doing is incredibly self serving and not helping. In fact, it's having the exact opposite impact than what you are hoping that it's having.
Hmm.
So, I call bullshit on you, good sir. And I've kind of just lost hope, for better or worse, that's going to kind of happen. So instead, what I do is I'm just like, I can't control what's out there. Like,
Right.
it's going to happen, right? Social media is short form snippets. Uh, it's pretty rare to find somebody who's a good enough communicator and has a high enough knowledge of something where they can simplify it and include the requisite nuance and context that needs to
Right.
be in basically every topic, that it is appealing and has the right hook and interesting and educational appropriately on social media. I don't expect that to be there.
Hmm.
I don't. It's nice to see it, but it's pretty rare that I'll see it. I try to achieve that myself. I think I do sometimes. I think I don't sometimes. It's just hard to do. But what I can do is I can impact my own response to it. So when I take in information, no matter how sexified that information is, I can put it through the fog filter. Is what they're saying a fact, an opinion, or a guess? It doesn't decredit the person or the information. Just puts it in the right bucket for me to figure out what to do to use that or not use that myself.
I think that was the title of a Rick James album in the 1980s, John. Sexified by Rick
Okay.
James. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it sounds like something that they do. I actually don't know anything about Rick James
That's
other
all right.
than Dave Chappelle's Rick James. I'm
That's
a
and
James bitch.
you have a complete reference of Rick James if you
Is that it?
you've gotten everything that you need to know historically and anecdotally about Rick James. That's the funniest shit of all time. I need to watch that today. I don't want to sidetrack us, but
Well,
that's
the whole Chappelle skit with Prince and pancakes
yeah, yeah, yeah.
actually happened.
It happened. Yeah.
That's
I
a
mean,
real
that's
story.
all the Charlie Murphy stories happen. And again, I don't want to sidetrack us here, John. You're going to get me off on a tangent, but
No,
I
if we're gonna talk
saw,
about Chappelle show, we can
yeah,
sidetrack as much as they
yeah,
want.
yeah. I saw
Yeah.
Prince recounting the story on Jimmy Fallon's
Oh,
show,
that's
saying,
funny.
"Yeah, that Prince deadpan. Yeah, that actually happened, but I didn't make pancakes." Because Jim, Fallon's like, "Did that actually happen? Was that?" He's like, "Yeah,
Right.
that happened." He
And
said, "You
Prince
guys
was
have pancakes?"
actually like a phenomenal basketball player.
Basketball player. Yeah, there's old photos of him on his high school team. And then Jimmy goes, "You guys had pancakes?" He said, "Yeah, but I didn't make them." And that's the interview. I thought, what a time to be alive. But I digress. So,
Amazing.
off to number three, John. I know you got a third one. We got a list here.
Number three is really, really short. Will this allow me to be more present in my work or with the ones that I love?
Oh, okay.
Just the simplest question in the world.
I,
It is very easy to get caught up in an ego thing when somebody makes a
oh,
request of you, especially if you're kind of moving up in your field and people are starting to ask you to do stuff that at one point you really would have like died to do. But I think about like when I went from, oh my God, I'll talk anywhere for free, please, 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 just ask me to, nah, you got to pay me like a lot
right.
in order for me to talk. Um, but and even then, I'm still gonna say no, like almost all of the time, and it's
Right.
because I'm so honored to be asked, always, every single time, no matter what it is. I'm so honored to be asked that I have to check myself and go back to this question: will this allow me to be more present in my work or with the ones that I love?
I
And
got a
the answer
question
is
for you.
almost always no.
I got a question for you on this one, John. Like for you, did that shift for you because of um, I don't want to use the word success, but did that shift for you because of your feeling that you had done great work in the industry? Like, okay, I've contributed a lot. I'm solid with what I provided. I am no longer at the point where I'm worried about imposter syndrome or whether I'm not doing. I know I'm good doing
I,
good
I
work,
think I think a
or
little bit of that,
okay, or did it
or
shift
what?
because of Allison? Right? We
Oh, 100
find our
percent.
well, okay,
Well,
or
Allison, not so much Allison, more so the kids, because
that's what I was going to ask. That was
when I
my
was
third
just with
option.
Allison, like she would come with me.
Right, right.
So
I
if
was
I
going to
give a
ask.
talk in Europe or whatever it is, she just come
Right.
with me, and we'd like we got engaged at the Culzean Castle in Scotland, and I did a full day seminar in Edinburgh. So we flew into Edinburgh. I did a full day
Mm-hmm,
seminar. We drove up the coast of Scotland, got engaged on the way up, came back down, and then I did another full day seminar in Bath, England on the way
mm-hmm,
down.
mm-hmm.
Like that was when we got engaged. Was in between two speaking gigs that paid for more than that whole
Right.
like
The trip.
2.5 3 week
Yeah.
trip.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I see people shift perspective a lot when children happen, when children
Yeah,
arrive,
bro,
and
your
and I
time
totally
with
get
them is
that.
so short. It's
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
short and it's
Absolutely.
so special. And even just if we're not careful on any given day, there was advice that a friend of mine's father was a pastor.
Mm-hmm,
He was just super wise guy. He is I mean, he's a retired pastor. He's not dead, but he was a retired pastor. And one of the pieces that advice that he gave to me when I was over at my friend's place, he was over there as well, was um, no matter how many children you have, every single day you get on the floor and you spend 15 minutes one on one with each kid.
mm-hmm,
Doesn't
mm-hmm.
matter what that is, whether you're playing Lego, whether you're reading books, because it's so easy to go through the motions
Mm-hmm.
and just let the days pass. And you don't want to look up one day and have missed it.
Right.
So I agree. Yeah, I think, but But I think what the first thing that you said, I don't remember exactly how you said it, but it's not so much like any success or any of that or anything or whatever that
Hmm.
means that I've had or not had. In I mean, depends who you compare it to, right? Like,
Right,
there's a lot of people who have had a lot more success than me. Like, I'm good for
right,
me,
right,
but there's a lot of people who look at me and they're like, "Yo, you're just getting started." And I look at me and I say,
right.
"I'm just getting started," but I also look at me and say, "I've done some shit."
Yeah.
And so I feel like I'm in a stable position
Hmm.
now, just in that I've done so many things and had so much of it not work
Right.
that I'm no longer afraid of something not working
Satis-
because I
set,
know that it's going to suck in the moment, and then I
right,
know it's just going to become a funny story you tell on a podcast a couple years
right,
later.
right. Because
Like, it just
satisfaction
doesn't
is
matter.
it's so sort of ethereal. It can be really similar to the physical satisfaction that our clients want. They think it's an event, but
Yeah.
it's really a decision. Like satisfaction is more of a decision than something actually. It's not one of those destination happiness things. So I wondered about that because as a person who works in the industry and also coaches people who are new to the industry, newer than me at least,
Right.
you can see the drive for getting something somewhere, this amount of clients or this amount of income or this amount of published papers or whatever, and it could drive you to the point where you just don't have a really good balance of deciding what's what's a good decision for my time and what's a bad decision for my time. You can really get blinded by that, almost like a
So
form of
here's a
sort of
lot of where I think the problem is. This actually is from the book. I've added it in. I've added in a fair bit to this chapter, but life isn't a story, but stories are how we talk about life.
mm-hmm,
And when you think about it, the most common story structure has three acts. Act one is the setup, where the
mm-hmm,
main characters are introduced to some sort of inciting incident that propels them on a journey. Act two is confrontation, where there's an
right,
unexpected plot twist that leads to disaster, crisis, escalating until it all feels hopeful. And
yes,
basically, every movie, every book, every story you've ever read, the end of Act Two is when it feels helpless and you're wondering how the heck the character is going to get themselves out of this situation, right? And then Act Three is resolution, which is the
mm-hmm,
payoff, where everybody lives happily ever after. Simplified, and this is admittedly very much simplified, but simplified, just about every well known narrative follows the structure.
mm-hmm,
With humans, though, steps two and three don't need to exist.
right,
I don't think disaster and hopelessness is necessary, and I know there's no happily ever after,
right,
right? There's one day, then there's the next day,
right.
and once those are done, more days are going to come. Life
Hopefully,
has a beginning and an end, but beyond that, it's just one long journey to enjoy.
right, right,
We think we think that once we make a certain amount of money,
mm-hmm.
that will be it, and we'll live happily ever after. This ain't no Disney shit. Robert Hastings wrote this beautiful short story called The Station. You can Google it. It's very, very short. It's called The Station. And what he wrote in it is, sooner or later we must realize there is no one station. I'm going to start that again. Robert Hastings, in his beautiful short story The Station, wrote, sooner or later we must realize there is no one station, no one place to arrive at once and for all. The true joy of life is the trip. The
Mm-hmm.
station is only a dream. It constantly outdistances us.
Absolutely, 100% correct. Eloquently put. He must be a writer.
He's not. He's like a super. I looked up who he was.
Super soldier, like
He is
Captain
the.
America.
He is the. You can't make this shit up. Robert L. Hastings is the world's foremost researcher on the subject of UFO activity at nuclear weapon sites.
So, for all you listeners out there, niche down. Uh,
Bet you
you
wouldn't
don't
have
want to
guessed
just
that
be,
one.
yeah, you don't want to just be a UFO specialist. No, I'm
I
a
don't know
UFO
if there's
specialist.
multiple Robert Hastings. There might be, but at this point, I'm unwilling to find out because I just want to
Yeah,
live and die
that's that's our
thinking
guy.
that that's the truth of who the
We've
guy is.
decided that that's the person who wrote
That's
the
our guy.
quote. Oh, UFOs only at nuclear sites.
Yeah, that's our guy. That's our
Yeah, is this
guy.
Robert? I've seen a UFO. Are you close to a nuclear site? No. All right, call somebody else. I'm busy.
I'm busy.
Oh my gosh,
But
that was
that's part of the
gold.
problem, right? We've grown up. We've we've been made to believe that stories have a happily ever after.
Right,
It's not. They like yeah, sure, you're born and you die,
right,
but beyond that, man, you don't have to read many biographies and autobiographies of quote unquote super successful people that we all admire
right,
to know that in many cases you would not change your life with
right,
theirs.
right,
And it's because once they get everything that they ever thought that they wanted, and they gave up a lot to get it, because generally the only way to really get ahead to that extent is to do things other people aren't willing to do.
right,
Like at a certain point in time, you just can't be that much smarter than somebody else. You know, it's like success is talent and luck. Tremendous success is a little bit more talent and a lot more luck.
right.
That's the equation. And so once you get that, that you've basically had to, both gotten lucky and had to do things that perhaps you didn't want to do, or you and I when wouldn't consider right to do,
Yeah,
they realize that it's not what they dreamed of, or they didn't even know what they dreamed of. It was just trying to get ahead and ahead and ahead and ahead. And all of a sudden they're
hmm,
so far ahead and they're still even trying to get ahead more. It's like the story of the guy who was the $30 million house. He was sitting there at dinner complaining that he can't buy a baseball team. And then the two baseball team owners, bitching at each other that so and so has a bigger yacht. And it's just like
right,
at a certain point, it just gets ridiculous.
right, right.
But this is the game that's kind of played. We're not going to get through all these 11. When I say we
That's
make
all
this
right.
a two-parter,
Let's do it.
so the next one, number 4. How we only at 4? How long have we been doing this for?
Cause I keep talking, John. I keep
Jesus.
asking you questions. I'm being a good podcast co-host. Thank you very much. I'm
I have
insulted by
all of
your
these really
insinuation.
like I know I have all of these like controls now because I'm this is the first time I've ever been on this side of it as a like
It's
producer of
too
the
much.
podcast.
It's too much power for you, John.
I can be
Don't
honest, I
touch
don't
it.
like it.
Yeah, don't touch those buttons. You
I don't
got
like
one
it.
button to push, the one with the arrow. You leave the other fucking buttons alone.
So far this recording is 750, 760 megabytes big. Uh yeah, I can tell you all
You're like
these
a
things, man.
you're like a kid in an excavator for the first time.
Mhm. Number 4. Number 4 is something that Online Trainer Academy students will certainly be familiar with, which is how will this look like if it were easy?
Hmm.
God, we have a tendency to overcomplicate things, don't we? When you break down everything into its elements, it becomes much more clear to figure out how to build it back up using the simplest elements possible to complete the task. So, the theory behind doing this all is called first principles,
Mm-hmm.
which it refers to the process of breaking down any task, service, or job into its elements and then building it back up without without any belief or assumption or attention to whatever already exists. So
Mm-hmm.
basically, what you're doing is you're saying, if nothing out there existed, I'm going to take these parts and I'm going to put them together in the best way possible. Um, Elon Musk is famous for popularizing first principles. There was this crazy blog post series by Tim Urban at Wait But Why called, I think it was The Cook and the Chef, where he talks about Elon Musk. Uh, and he was given like a lot of access to Musk as well. And a lot of it is about first principles thinking. So it's like 70,000 words. It's long. But if you want to dive deep into this, it's well worth the read. But this is what we did with Quick Coach. And it was like, okay, well, we feel like we know more about personal training and online training than anybody else who's built software, certainly than we did when they built the software.
Mm-hmm.
And we also know more about the software world because I've advised these companies for like 8 years at this point. Okay, now I'm going to pretend that none of these things exist. Here are all of the problems we're trying to solve. Some of them we ended up at the same conclusions, and some of them we do things radically different. And it's way better the way that we're doing it. But you only come across that with a true sort of first principles approach. So, this idea of how would this look like if it were easy, a lot of people out there that you perhaps admire or you're looking at how they do things, like they're so successful, I've got to do what they do. Actually, they don't know what the fuck they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And oftentimes what's happened is they started to do something and then they did something else and then they did something else and then they did something else and now they've done so much stuff they can't even remember the journey or why they do what they're doing. They're just still doing it, and there's so much sunk cost and so much effort that they put in that they can't like leave that and change it and go to something else. And so what you can do is probably largely ignore that and just build a process of saying, again, work backwards. What's the problem I'm trying to solve here? Okay, what's the biggest problem? What are some other tangential problems? Can I build back these pieces and bypass difficult problems and build back up a lot easier? When building software was the hardest thing I ever did. There's no question. Much harder than writing books, much harder than building out any of the other businesses. And it was hard because I had to build this thing that tens of thousands of people are going to use with hundreds of thousands of clients in different ways. And it has to make sense for all of them based off of what they think is the right way to do something, even if they're wrong.
Mm-hmm.
It's still what they think is the right way. so so it was really hard because once you code a thing in, it's there, it's final, and the effort to code the thing in can't really be changed. There's a lot of, I mean, it can, but like there's a lot of finality in that. And the reason that I bring this up is the most important thing that I ever did, and the advice that I'll give to anybody, and this is not advice that I came up with. This is advice that when I was looking at like building software, like this was the advice overwhelmingly of where people screwed up, what they do differently, or people who built great things, what they did and what they focused on was figure out the one most important feature and make that the best in the world. And then all of the other features that support that thing just need to be okay.
Mm-hmm.
But you need to nail one thing. Quick Coach has the best program developer and builder on the planet.
Mm-hmm.
What does every single coach, whether you're a nutrition coach, habit coach, personal trainer, online trainer, what does every single coach need to do? The one thing all of them need to do is build and deliver a plan to their client.
Mm-hmm.
That is the most important single feature. We put all of our efforts, and holy shit, that plans builder, it looks simple and it's so easy to use. Holy shit, that thing's complicated. But I can tell you right now, we have the best program builder in the world. And nobody is even close. Because
Mm-hmm.
we built it from this first principles approach from the ground up. And the other stuff that we do, the truth is, other people probably do it better than us.
Mm-hmm.
Other people probably have better post workout questionnaires or whatever. Other people probably have better ways to track performance of their clients. But we do it good enough because none of that stuff really matters that much.
Mm-hmm.
And as you're building whatever you're building or doing whatever you're doing, I suggest you take the same approach. Figure out the one thing that is the most important feature or element or service that you provide and just nail that. And then everything else that you do, good enough is fine. It doesn't mean that you're not going to try to do it well. Like, I think we don't just do like I don't think we do a shit job on the other things.
Right.
But I readily admit that other people do them better than us because they put more effort into it, but I just don't think it matters enough to require that much effort.
Right.
And so that's what I recommend based off of this. How would this look like if it were easy?
Simplicity has its place. A couple of my favorite episodes of every version of the podcast that we've done so far has always been sort of the shoestring online trainer uh, process. Like, how can I
Yeah.
break this all? If I had no money, no access to, and various applications, how could I build this thing? And it works effectively the same. Like, so much of what our students, some of the time, so much of what they get caught up in is just unnecessary fluff. Um, Fundamentally, you need a client, you need a payment method, you need a program. It's not a whole lot more to it than that, uh,
Hmm.
really. I love this one concept. Changed a lot of what I did as an online trainer. Struggling through it for 2 years before the old OTA became a thing. That one phrase sort of sat me down, and I was like, "Well, shit." Why did somebody tell me this before? This can be easy. We get caught up. I also think imposter syndrome is a root cause of wanting to project complexity sometimes too. If I'm sophisticated and complex, I'll seem more like I belong. And it's really the opposite. Professionals simplify your life; they don't complicate it. Uh,
Right.
I digress.
Well, no, keep talking because I'm looking for something.
Well, good, Jonathan. You know I love a good ramble. Oftentimes people tell me about their workout, particularly clients that hire me after they worked in other spaces or
Oh,
with
here,
other
wait, I found it.
clients. All right, well, that's the end of my story. It's a good story.
So this was in. You probably saw this message. This was in the precision nutrition group, and this I guess PM graduate posted a picture of their badge, like certified nutrition level 1 coach, and he goes,
Hmm.
"Great news! Finally got my badge. Now where to begin? I'm on info overload. LOL. Not sure what to do next. Any suggestions?" What do you think my response was?
Get a client.
Get a client. Period.
That's it.
And he responded, he said, "I'm an OTA student as well. I've been trying." I said, "Stop overthinking it, man. Literally close all of your books and
Right.
find 10 people to talk to today. Call each
Right.
one and ask for advice on what they're looking for in a fitness coach if they were to hire one." Like, it just, you don't need to study more. You don't need to know just one more thing. You need to get a client. You need to do whatever you need to do. I don't care if it's scalable.
Right.
I don't care if it's optimized. I don't care if you're charging the right amount or not the right amount. It just, none of that matters, because you're going to figure out all of that stuff when you're forced to, when there's another human who's like, "Do fitness." And you're like, "Well, how do I do fitness for you? I've read all these books. How do I do fitness?" They're like, "I want to do fitness." And you're like, "Okay, let's do fitness." And then you figure that shit out. That's
The person
how
poking
it
you with a
works.
stick. Do something.
do fitness. It's like every single company building artificial intelligence tools right now.
Right.
It's like their investors are like, "Hey, company, do AI,"
Do
and
AI.
they're like AI. They're like, "Yeah, artificial intelligence." Like, no, I know what it stands for, but what do you want us to do with AI? They're like, "AI, people need AI," and the company's like, "No, I get it, but like we have this great product that's selling and this great community, and that's why you invested in us. Why don't we just keep doing that?" They're like, "AI," and you're like, you just keep saying the same word over and over again. They're like, "But AI," and you're like, "I guess we have to do AI because you're investors." Good. AI.
Right.
Uh,
Right. Turn out another shitty AI project.
yeah. No, you can use AI to automate your marketing and content development. I don't know what that means. No,
Oh.
this is good because it can automate content and community. Those words, I know what those words mean but when you put them together, I don't quite. So what? How am I gonna benefit from these words that you're putting together
So
in this new way? And then they just say AI, and you're like, "No, not, we're just going in circles."
this is it's fucking Ego Montoya from The Princess Bride, right, my friend? That word you keep saying, I don't think it means what you think it means. Right? They're like automate. For 2 words I'm sick of hearing throughout the course of 2023, John, is automate and inflammation. Those are two words
Yeah.
that I'm so sick of hearing from people on social media. Automate and inflammation.
Automation and inflammation is the
Yeah,
detoxification of
yeah.
2023.
It's the
In
detox
20
of 23, John.
in 2018 it was detox. In
Every coach
2023
is
it's automation
automating,
and
and
inflammation.
every fear mongerer is fighting against inflammation. I
Oh
had a
my
lady
god.
lady say that fruit causes neuroinflammation. And I was like, do you even know what that word means, man? Like,
And
why
she
are fruit?
says AI, and you're like, what? How are those two things related?
Oh man, can you put my neuroinflammation into Chat GPT so I can eat fruit? What the fuck are you saying? Like, I don't.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, my
how
head
is this?
hurts. Yeah,
Do
but
you want these? Do you want these Chat GPT prompts? No.
that's what I'm gonna start offering people. My new 12-week signature program is gonna be nothing but Chat GPT prompts, John, for
It's just going to be
fitness.
prompts. I'm not going to give you anything. You're going to buy from me the right prompts for your fitness goals.
Solve your own, automate your own
Oh my
fitness,
god.
reduce your inflammation with these Chat GPT prompts for my 12-week program.
I want to move to a forest.
Oh man, Amber's
Jeez.
gonna
All
hear
right.
this and she's gonna be highly disappointed, John.
We miss you, Amber. Let's see. Now, Amber gave me another image to tell me how to end the podcast, and it pointed to the button. It was a big red arrow that pointed to the button that said leave, and then another image which showed me what happened when I pressed that button, which is another arrow that points to the image that says end call for everybody. So when oh, here we go, end session for all. I got it. I found it.
So we're done. Is that your way of saying this podcast, this episode is over?
Thanks for hanging out. Oh wait, I have to recommend another episode.
Yeah,
Wait,
recommend.
shit. Ren,
Oh,
take up time.
I don't know what time to take up, but I know that you also didn't. Do you want to talk about your fabulous uh, fitness
No, we
attire?
won't talk about that today.
Okay, we did enough of that. All right,
Yeah.
good
All right, I
good
got
job,
another
John.
episode. Whatever.
All right.
Episode 72, if you're listening for another episode, if you're looking for another episode to listen to right now, I'm going to recommend you check out episode 72. It's called Sit in the Mud to Get More Done. And this is about constantly feeling like you need to optimize to be more productive, and what you should actually be doing instead, which is sitting in the mud, kind of sitting in the boring space and trying to figure out not necessarily what more you should do, but the few things that you should be working on doing better, and just how hard that is in the process for doing that. So, okay, do I need to look at that image again? No, leave
No.
end
Chat
session for
GPT
all.
sits in the mud for me, John. My
Yeah,
mud
and we'll
sitting is
finish the
automated.
other. What do we do? We did 4. We'll finish the other 7
Good
in
hell.
the next episode of this.
All right, that's fair. Good job, John. You brought a lot to the show today.
You too, Ren.
And you're both MC and DJ today. It's hard to spin records and rap at the rain time. Rap at the
Yeah,
rain time. Same.
I'm gonna click this button.
Do the button,
Okay.
John.
All
Push
right,
the
bye.
button. Did you push it?